A lot of you have been asking about my environment setup. Whenever I post videos about fine tuning or inference using open source models, I get this question a lot in the chat, which is about what type of GPU infrastructure do you use? What is your environment setup and so on. So I thought of making a quick video about my environment setup. Basically, I use two different environments. One is my personal machine, which has 16 GB of RAM, right? CPU. I kind of split my experiments into two phases. The first preparation phase, just to avoid the waste of time in terms of setting up the environment. I start with the code in my local machine, right? Or you can even use Google Colab, for instance, to set up all the necessary things that you need. Once you have the basic version of your code and you need to say run the inference or the fine tuning, that's when you need GPU. I switch to Runpod. Okay, just to make it clear, this is not a promotional video. Basically, I use Runpod for all my personal tests as such. I've been using it for years and I feel really comfortable using this environment. And that's why I thought of sharing it with you. You can use any vendor as of your use. So if you are new to AI, where you have tested a lot of API-based models and you want to test, inference or fine tuning with open source models, and you want to know how to set up, environment in a quicker way, easy way, this video is for you. Okay, so the first setup is to generate keys, SH keys. This is only for the first time, right? Once you set up your Runpod account, add some credits, right? For the first time, you have to run this command in your computer and then it generates your public and private keys, right? So what you are going to do is to copy this public key and move to Runpod. Basically, go to the settings section. And once you scroll down, you'll see a section called SSH public keys and just click on this and paste your public key. And this is just only for one time, right? Once this is done, the authentication part is done. And from the next time, it's going to be super easy for you to set up GPU infrastructure and run a test. Let's see how it can be done with an example. Move to the pod section. Let's scroll up, go to the pod section. Here we are going to select our GPU infrastructure based on our need. For example, imagine that you are going to run SLM with say 2 billion parameters. You need around 16 GB or 24 GB of GPU to serve your model. Or if you're going to perform say a fine tuning of a 7 billion parameter or 12 billion parameter model, you need a little bit more GPU as such, like maybe 48 GB or 48 GB or 80 GB infrastructure, right? So basically, depending on your need, you can select your GPU infrastructure. In my case, I select two different types of GPUs based on my requirement. If I'm going to run a smaller model, I typically choose the one with 24 GB VRAM. Or if I'm going to say perform, fine tuning with a larger batch size, or I want to run inference on a huge load in a batch way, I use A40. A40 is more of a way to go because it has 48 GB VRAM and it costs around $0.44 per hour. So after this, I always kind of change the default settings. So you can use the same images you want. If you're like, for example, imagine that you're going to perform inference, only inference with VLLM. Instead of using the Runpod Docker image, you can directly use VLM's Docker image and run the inference. That's much easier to set up as such. But in my case, if I'm going to perform very specific tasks, I have to set up things and stuff, I use the default Docker image. Here you can specify the start command if you want to, like if you want to override the start command. In my case, I'm not going to. And here again, selecting the disk is based on your preference, right? If you're going to run same test over and over for a period of time, it makes sense to have a network disk set up so that your data is persistent and you don't have to say download the data set over and over. Most of my experiments are short-lived and hence I'm selecting the container disk as 200 GB, right? And this person disk as 0. That means whenever I'm going to terminate the pod, all my data will get lost, right? So I have to make sure that I take backup of whatever the things that is needed, right, before I terminate the pod. And a couple of other important information that we can set up is the code that needs to be exposed. If you're, for example, if you're going to say run an inference in this particular pod and you have to test it from your local machine, right? Imagine that you're going to run inference, a fast API service in the Runpod container, and you have to consume that from your local machine because you have the client interface which is running in your local computer. In that case, you need to have this port exposed, right? So you can run your inference in 8080 and then just use this port to communicate between the client and the server. And at last, you can set up the environment variables. Again, one of the useful segment. For instance, if you want to say set your Hugging Face keys as it's right, instead of copy pasting your Hugging Face key every single time, you can set this Hugging Face key as a secret in your environment and just select what are the values that you want to select here, right? And that's it. All you have to do is this just one time. You have this setup with your Docker image and set of ports and just set the overrides. Right now, the altogether the cost of this particular machine is around $0.47. It's very simple to set up. Right now, all I have to do is to click on deploy pod. Let's go ahead and click it, and we are going to wait for the pod to get started.